Hello, everybody. Welcome to Q&A Tuesday. Thank you for all your comments and questions. I love that they come in. And when people join the private Eating Peace Facebook group, they automatically get to ask a question. So I have so many built up from over time, but there was a theme as I was looking through questions. And one is the simple theme that might seem so obvious to so many of us related to compulsive experience when it comes to eating, which is why so many of you are here, what this topic is, and that is that they hate the shape of a heavy body. They hate fat. They hate extra, hate cellulite. I mean, just like really aggressive energy towards the way that appears and the way it looks. Kind of an automatic, deep negativity when it comes to what's seen in the mirror or just what's looked at that you can gaze at on your own body and others. Many people will say, I don't have judgment about those other people that look like XYZ, that look like that have a heavy weight, that, appear to have a body shape that looks like that. This can show up not just in bodies and shapes. I don't have judgment when the person dresses like that or smells like that or has that kind of countenance or looks that particular way. And yet, while that might be addressing something that is accurate within, like that notices there's a greater harshness towards the self than to these other people out in the world, there is still something to notice about these people that we care about, strangers and people close to us, where we're looking and our gaze rests on something about that person, whether it be heaviness and fat and weight and an ugliness of some kind, but also other things that we find unacceptable or ugly or wrong, and just that deep wishing for it to be different. I want it to change. I want it to change. That should look different than it is. That is ugly to me. You notice like somebody even just behaving in a certain way, a child having a tantrum, or your spouse doing what they do that's irritating. That should be different than it is. It seems like the ground of compulsion is born out of believing that should be different than it is. And it's often got nothing to do with weight and body image. It's what happens before that. There's a feeling, there's an experience about life, reality as you're seeing it, and the thought that should be different than it is. But noticing when it comes to just the shape of the body and the appearance, I mean, you could find this in any way, even if you think your body is looking the right way and you've landed on it that way, that there's something often that you can find that very quickly that could be improved. That should look different than it does. That should look different than it does. It may seem true. So we ask that question as we deeply inquire into our thinking. The inquiry process allows like an open sense of wondering and just awareness and contemplation and slowing down rather than assuming so quickly, yep, that for sure is ugly. I'm just seeing we had to learn it. We had to get the feel of it. A little 3-year-old doesn't think that person's too fat over there. They don't care. They don't mind. They don't mind. We'll think that if we drop the thought, I want that to change, that the result is it will never change. You just know there's such a gripping onto, and it has to. It really has to change. I am so motivated by this thing having to change. I am deeply insisting that it change. Just notice what happens when we believe that that's true. That must change. And I know we're beginning here today in this work with that weight must change, the shape and size of the body, the appearance of the body. That needs to change. But look at those other people or life itself, or just the other things we experience where that's our thought. It has to change. What happens when you think this thought? You notice the aggression and the tight fists, sometimes rage about it, argument, defensiveness, making a plan to get the thing to change. I'm going to get on track here. We're going to get this to change. The picture of the alternate reality where the body looks the right way, and how much better you'd feel, and how great that would be, and how right that would be. If those people changed, how much better that would be, and how good it would be over there. You just notice you have to have those images of what it looks like that's better. And this is not good. And of course, when it comes to food and eating, we'll really see, or when it comes to weight, put it that way, when it comes to weight, this weight and shape of the body and how the body is being in the world needs to change, then we'll have like hyper focus on food and eating. They're completely tied together. And I know it looks like that, but there's just it looks like we'll think we need to do it like that over there with the food and eating, and just get that squared away, and then the weight will turn out the right way. But without that story, it takes a lot of aggression then to control the compulsion that needs to change. So without the story that needs to change, I know it's so odd because we just feel so unhappy. That's why people wind up in the eating peace group, or looking so closely, or reading and studying about compulsion and emotional eating and any kind of compulsion. It needs to change. I'm suffering here. I'm suffering. I'm overdoing it over here. My mind is like, even when I'm having the thought, like feel like kind of almost addicted to the thought, my partner should change, my kids should change, my parents should change, my boss should change. I would be happier if they did. I'd be happier if this changed. And then the mind goes into how that happens. How does a change happen? Lots of advice. So advice in this case, when it comes to weight and eating, about what should be eaten, how that looks. So if we didn't have the story that it should change, I mean, what a strange thing to ponder. How can it be if we see something as ugly and unacceptable? How can we see through a pair of glasses that says, what if that wasn't the case? What if you weren't seeing it that way? What if you weren't requiring this to change in order to be happy? I mean, often there'll be the thought, when I ask people, they will just have to suffer, like living with this thing the way it is. Like, I'm just going to be fat and happy, I guess, which of course isn't really true that they're happy. I'm going to have to just endure this way. There's nothing I can do about it. Kind of a hopeless state of experience. I guess I just have to live with that person who's, irritating me. I guess I just have to endure going to my job that I don't like. So it'll kind of go all the way into like a hopeless resignation about it all. I need to have this thought. So if I don't have this thought, it will truly never change. I must have the thought that this should change, that it's ugly and unacceptable. But if you imagine dropping it, and while you're at it, imagine, who would you be if it didn't mean that it will never change, if you drop the thought that it should? I like the idea. There's a quote there somewhere, and I don't know where the quote goes, but if you look into a mirror, the mirror has no judgment about whatever is seen in it. The mirror is just reflecting back what's there, but it has no concern whatsoever about whether the thing is ugly or beautiful that's seen in the mirror. It is neutral about absolutely anything present. It's just a reflection. So imagining, could I see in that way? Now, who would I be without my story? This weight and body image needs to change. This person, these people, this condition in life, this, what I encounter absolutely has to change for me to be happy. Who would I be if I didn't have that story? And what if it was okay not to have it? And it doesn't mean it will never change. I love noticing that change is constant. Impermanence is just present all around us. Don't we love the beauty of impermanence? Sometimes it's like that this thing is seen just for this temporary moment. The sunrise or the sunset only looks like that particular day, and that we're just so moved by it, or the way life appears in the moment. Impermanence doesn't have to be a sad or tragic thing, but the body will go. It is definitely not permanent. The body is on its way out eventually. But holding that without being so upset or rigid or horrified by that, grossed out by it. Who would I be without my story? This should change. Could I relax and see more about what's going on, just in the moment, more curious about what's happening? It's all right to notice that we're suffering, something feels off balance, and like even as we look at something that seems so ugly, that I hate it. I hate that thing over there. I hate that person, the way they're behaving. I hate this reflection, the body and how it looks. I hate that pain. I hate that, just noticing, if I could be curious about that. I mean, just so interested. I had to learn it somewhere. After the age of 2 or 3, I had to learn this is unacceptable. And I'd invite anyone to see what else is unacceptable. If this is unacceptable, the weight and the body shape and size and kind of how it's showing up. There's probably other things that I think are unacceptable that are part of my experience, like feelings. In the Eating Peace Immersion program that's underway right now, we just do it once a year. It's people are looking at feelings very closely and seeing how much judgment there is about how we actually feel. So I feel like shocked or frightened or annoyed or sad or heartbroken, grief, just concern, worry, nervousness, tightness. I just feel that in and out during my day. I mean, just aware things happen, the movement of life, and there'll be this response to it. And that there's a lot of judgment about feelings themselves. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be upset. That should change. And often that's where a compulsion comes in as its medicine to help out on something really uncomfortable that's going on. Quick, change the channel. Go over here to something pleasurable. Let's eat, drink, smoke, buy, plan. Do the thing that I like to do that takes me out of what's over there, screen time. And if I didn't think any of those things were wrong, noticing the relief of them, it's just kind of very sweet and kind, very compassionate to notice the interest in relief, just finding relief, just relaxing with what's happening in the moment. So imagine relaxing, looking in the mirror. If you have that judgment about the ugliness of the body, or never wanting your body to be like that over there. Let's say you're like hyper rigid about thinness, because that's just, flip side of the same coin. Just hyper rigid about thinness, and I'm just making sure that I never one drop, off the scale of what things should be, and need to be very tight, need to get to the gym, need to go, like a lot of aggression about keeping it the way it is. So same thing, but still a hatred for that other alternate way, the fatness way. Who would I be without the story? Just finding the relief in letting go, being like the mirror itself, which doesn't care, doesn't mind one way or the other what's being reflected back. Simply noticing, allowing things to be the way they are and the flow, and that nothing is so terribly dangerous. Yeah, nothing's so dangerous. So I just like somebody in the Eating Peace group said yesterday that her grandmother always says, love and hate are the same thing. It's kind of sweet, though. Little wisdom popping in from grandmother generation to see that intense feeling. And we know that it doesn't feel the same, love and hate, but that hatred, there's lots of focus and intensity and caring. Boy, do I ever care if I hate something. I am thinking of it as ultra important. And if I care about it so much and I believe that it should change, it's like just looking at my happiness depends on this changing. I cannot be happy unless. So I'm dependent on this changing to find any happiness in here, which is a false belief. I mean, it's worth questioning. Who would you be without the story? I hate the way this looks. My happiness depends on it changing, or keeping it the way it is, grabbing tightly or pushing something away. Who would I be without that story? Who are you already without the story, without the mind talking about what's going on? Who would we be? Who would you be? In the present moment, even looking in the mirror, eyes open, seeing. What if you could just relax in the I don't know place? I watch the mind do all its things, talking about all kinds of things that could be improved or taken away or fixed, or just it's always doing that in service to us. Here's how life could be better. Your life could be better. This is what you need to do now. And this that it's like a servant constantly, ready to give its options for happiness. But if I really didn't believe that anything it's saying is the truth, and nothing is required to make changes and shifts. I mean, imagine who you'd be having the body the way it is in the moment be absolutely and completely okay. And knowing, trusting, it doesn't mean it's staying this way forever. I find many people have discovered that when they have a gripping hatred of the way it appears, that makes it stay that way longer. So without the story, and then just feeling it begins to become, it has nothing to do with the body and how it's showing up in the moment. I want to feel the sense of peace and neutrality about every moment and the feelings and how I'm responding to life, move and change, and food coming and going, food doing what it does, people doing what they do. Noticing I become one with food, and then I relax with food. And that's not required at all. I'm not thinking about food. And then I'm coming back with food again. And then it fades out as needed. It just comes and goes like a flow of life. like air coming and going and coming and going. And we're not ever saying, I don't like the amount of air. Well, maybe we do, but it's just mostly seeing in that state of day-to-day moment, breath to breath happening, that we're just trusting the body to take in the right amount of air. I know that can change if there's something going on with the lungs. Maybe not a perfect metaphor, but just seeing the flow in and out, not needing to control it by therefore changing all the food and eating and, wanting control. Who would I be without my story? That I hate that. Turned around, I hate my thinking about this. I hate my thoughts about weight. I'm aggressive towards my thinking about weight and all that it means and the story that I tell. Once upon a time, when somebody was fat, they were rejected. They were unacceptable. They were unloved. I just find constantly that doesn't seem to be true in the world. that weight, it really has that kind of meaning on it. Banishment versus acceptance. My thinking about this is hateful. And it's not even necessarily my thinking. It's just survival thinking, anxious thinking, fearful thinking. And the other turnaround, I love this. What a strange and weird turnaround to see what works about my body showing up the way it is showing up, without this constant need for it to be different and change. So is it possible that I could love it? I mean, what a thing to take into your day and your experience. I'm open, even if love seems a bit too much. I'm open, I'm willing. I might feel neutral, like the mirror. I'm accepting. Here it is, kind of no choice. So having this body, I'm just simply open. I don't hate it. I'd like to understand. I can bring awareness to this. I can see what works for me about what's been underway and what's happening. There's something that works for me here. And I'm open to seeing new ways. But I can watch closely at what happens during my day as emotions and experience and judgment flows in and out. And then my response to what's happening flows in and out, and food and eating, and then seeing the body. I can be more like the mirror. In fact, I am the mirror already. There is a part of me that is just here, aware, without the mind chattering and making a lot of noise about everything. That's who I am, what I am. Loving, open, being, willing, really interested in understanding rather than controlling or fighting or diminishing. So just see if you can look. I once did this exercise and I couldn't do the exercise looking at myself in a mirror without judgment. And it was offered to me something like 35 or 40 years ago. And then in Susie Orbach's work, she became a famous therapist in England. And then later, here comes the exercise again in a whole other modality, in a different kind of teacher, looking at yourself in the mirror with an open mind. Still couldn't really do it. And then did it with the work in mind, with the work of Byron Katie, seeing and looking in the mirror and being willing to wonder and just stare. Who would I be without my story? And this third time, after so many years had gone by, I suddenly realized that I wouldn't look at the earth. There's this place in Texas Hill Country. I grew up on visiting the Panhandle all the time, where my father grew up, and staying there many summers at my grandmother's house. The panhandle of Texas is very flat. And there's this other area of Texas called Texas Hill Country, and people consider it absolutely gorgeous. They also consider the panhandle gorgeous in its way. You know, beautiful, sparse, wild tumbleweeds rolling, then Texas Hill Country. And I realized, I wouldn't look at Texas and say, that place is prettier than that place. They're just different. And suddenly it came to me that this natural body that comes out of nature, it's not invented by my mind. That's what it looks like with non-judgment. It's just this open moment of staring and looking at it without the thought. It absolutely has to change. I wouldn't say Texas Hill Country needs to be flat, just like the panhandle. It's okay if it's got bumpy and it rolls. It's okay that it does. And from there, noticing without that aggression on what it looks like, becomes easier and easier to actually watch things change and then just come back to what's the center of the looker right here, the mirror itself that's going through a day in a human life, and watching when the urges come to eat and when they fade out, and what's happening in those moments that I'm aggressive and against, and just seeing and trusting and being with it can change absolutely everything. So let me know how it goes. Amazing to question, I hate the way that looks, and just let go of that story. And it really doesn't mean the body will never change. It's not a resignation. It's willing to see with a different pair of glasses, looking with no glasses at all. All right, lots of love, everyone. Thanks for all your questions, as always.